Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Michael Bradley.
I can tell you all that I have never been more excited, more determined, and more motivated for any challenge in my entire career.
You know, for me, at this point in my career, I'm excited to be back and looking forward to taking a big role in Toronto.
He's the one that gives the most on the field, the most competitive, who's the best example for a locker room.
Okie dokie. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
Might be the obvious answer, but a soccer player.
Soccer player. I got that.
Very effective game tonight from Michael Bradley. Sometimes it goes unnoticed, the work that he puts in.
I've had some of the biggest moments of my career, the biggest moments of my career at BMO Field. Our fans, my family, it's special. I've never been more proud of anything in my career.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Toronto Till I Die, the Toronto FC fan show. I'm Mike Newell, and tonight we're going to be taking some time to celebrate the career of, unarguably, I think, the most important player in Toronto FC history, and that, of course, is Michael Bradley. He'll be playing his final professional game this Saturday at BMO Field. There is a lot to dig into in terms of memories and just our thoughts on the captain with Michael Singh, Jeffrey P. Nesker, and of course, joining us is the editor-in-chief of TFC Republic, John Molinaro. We'll have some other guests joining as well, and we'll let you know as they jump in. But before we get started, big applause for that opening, Jeffrey P. Nesker. Wow, what an opening. Like, I saw it earlier and I teared up when you showed it to me the first time before we came on air. I'm glad you did that because I was like, I wouldn't want to well up while having you do that intro.
Yeah, I made sure to send it to just about everybody as a prerequisite. I could lie and say that was fun to cut. It sure as hell wasn't. I came pretty close to a thank you MB4 graphic, but I had to stop because I couldn't see what I was doing through the cut and onions. So that has to be good enough. It was my pleasure to do it. It's the least I can do for the greatest player to wear the badge. Let's be honest.
Yeah, for sure. And Mike, John, you both have, been around Michael Bradley for years now. From literally the day he arrived. I was in the same room you were in at Real Sports on the day he was announced or brought into the club itself. And it kind of almost came as a bit of a surprise. I think a lot of us knew Jermaine Defoe was coming, but then there was this double hit of Michael Bradley coming in. You've spoken extensively about your run-ins with Michael and over the years and things like that, especially sort of the instances around your mom and things like that. But take us back to that day, if you don't mind. A cold day in January when essentially the fortunes of this franchise kind of turned around. Not immediately, but started to turn around on that day.
Yeah, it was a pretty interesting and significant day because obviously all the attention at the time was on Jermaine Defoe because, as you'll recall, the club had spent the previous couple of weeks really hyping his sort of arrival with the big bloody big deal TV ads, and there was print ads and a social media campaign. And when you got to Real Sports, there was a double-decker bus with bloody big deal emblazoned on the right side. So they were not subtle about this, about sort of pushing Defoe as kind of like the marquee guy coming. Word had sort of it had been reported, the day before that, that Bradley was going to sign. So it didn't come as a total shock. But, when you look back at it now, it's interesting to note that while Defoe was kind of the one that was hyped to the hilt, he didn't end up staying at TFC, not even barely a year. And it was Michael Bradley who became, the focal point of the club. And, that day was just remarkable. I mean, TSN and Sportsnet, they cut away from live programming and they carried it live, like the entire process on their networks. I'm not sure that would have happened. Such a thing could happen right now. The place was packed, media was swarming, and there was, well, Mike, you can remember as a fan in the crowd, there was genuine hope and optimism for the first time
Yes.
in a very long time.
Yeah.
franchise who had really stumbled and bumbled its way through its first 7 seasons in the league. I mean, they had never made the playoffs. One can recall the 2012 campaign when they lost 9 in a row. And so having these two guys walk out on the stage, and particularly Bradley, who 26 at the time, very much in the prime of his career, coming from a top club in Serie A, he was seen as, the Messiah, as this was the guy that was going to lead the club to a promised land. And as you said, it didn't happen immediately. The 2014, there were some growing pains, but they eventually got there. But I don't think there's any question that that sort of day was the turning point for the franchise in a lot of ways, and it wasn't because of Tremaine Defoe, which a lot of people thought it would be. It's because of the other guy, Michael Bradley.
Yeah, interesting. And Mike, obviously, you've also spent a lot of time with Michael Bradley in and around the training ground, talking to him, different interviews. Sort of what are the things that are going through your mind now as he's about to, step on the pitch for the final time? What are the sort of the things that come to you in terms of memories or, interesting things that have sort of come on your path in terms of how you've crossed the captain?
Yeah, it's honestly something I'm still gathering my thoughts around. I mean, Michael Bradley means an incredible amount to not just Toronto FC. Obviously, I think it's not a hot take to say that he was the most, and it still is the most important figure in Toronto FC history. But also Toronto sports. I mean, look, 2014, when he arrived in Toronto at 26 years old or 25 years old, it was rare to see that, first of all, for around MLS, a figure like Michael Bradley come to the league at that age. It was even rarer to see someone like that come to Toronto and Toronto FC. And the way that he embraced the city, embraced the club, embraced the fan base, I'll say I really don't believe that there will ever be another Michael Bradley, because there might not be an opportunity for there to be another Michael Bradley because of what he's already established here and what he helped build here at Toronto FC. There's going to be another player, I'm sure, that comes along and rescues Toronto FC. But Toronto FC back in, as John illustrated, back in 2014, I mean, there was nothing before that. There was nothing of substance before that. And Michael Bradley kind of helped build that substance. So for me, that's kind of the way I'll remember Michael Bradley. And, I think I saw John share a story earlier on Twitter about, Michael Bradley's responses to maybe something he didn't like. And I remember it was during the pandemic over Zoom. And this was after Chris Armas got fired. This was the press conference. Chris Armas got fired, and they brought Michael Bradley out as one of the people to speak to media, which is, something he did over and over again, I think, throughout his career, something John could probably better speak to. But Michael Bradley was always there to sort of embrace the media. So I remember one of the things that Michael said was that, Chris Armas never really had a chance. And as Michael does, and as Michael has done throughout his career, he kind of owned the responsibility and said this one was on the players. So I remember, it was a serious question, because I think the narrative around that time was that Chris Armas was not up to par and maybe the wrong choice for head coach of Toronto FC, especially given the players that they had and the roster that was already there in place. So I remember just kind of asking him, like, okay, Michael, you're saying that, Chris Armas never really had a chance. Is there a coach out there that would have a chance or would have had a chance? And, I think it was a fair question given the narrative that was going around and how, Michael was defending Chris. And you could tell he kind of smirked, but that was kind of who Michael was. And you could tell he was, that's not really a question he might have appreciated at that time. But in as professional as he possibly could, he started his answer by complimenting me, complimenting my work, he's like, I love the way your wheels are turning right now. But that's one hell of a hypothetical question, and there's no way that I can answer that. And that's kind of just that little anecdote that kind of embodies just the way that Michael treated the media: fair, respectful, and quite frankly, blunt. So that's kind of how I'll remember Michael Bradley.
For sure. And JPN, look, I think you and I have been obviously fans of this club for a really long time. We've been there for a long time. We've been in the stands and watched him perform sometimes miracles in so many different ways. But what are the sort of the things that you're going to maybe pull away, or what are your sort of initial thoughts on the announcement? I know, but like just in terms of just like, how are you feeling right now? Like as a fan, like I got feelings. There was a lot of
garbage
people in the comments. Yeah,
like
fair
hot
enough.
garbage.
Yeah.
Thank you, John Molinaro. I've been hanging on almost every tweet, every article you've published over the last couple of days. It's been an excellent solve. My question to both of you is: have you counted how many MB4 death stares you've gotten over the duration, or is there too many to count? So, or are you going around with binders with like little X's like fighter pilots for Michael Bradley death stares that you've encouraged? Because Mike Singh isn't the first managing editor at WTR that I worked under, and oftentimes Michael would contest stuff that we had written. It was, and just to parrot what you guys are saying, it was always delivered with respect. And it was always delivered. It was blunt. It was curt, but there was always an understanding that, that there was a certain standard of interplay that the line would never be crossed. And it's interesting, Mikey, your question about Armas, right? The Rogues Gallery was specifically bringing up Michael Bradley as the one guy that was the worst equipped to play under an Armas system. So it's just so interesting that, he was always there to step in front and own it. And all I'm thinking about while I'm listening to you guys is how much that was missing over this last little spell, and trying to parse out without getting my tinfoil hat on as to the why. I don't want to speculate because I'm in danger of digging myself into a huge hole here, but I am upset. I may not be able to, we may have to put a swear warning on this one because I don't know if I can censor myself, but, I don't like it. I'm just dealing. I'm a bit numb. We all knew it was coming. It's been bandied around long enough, and age, no one can defeat Father Time. But God damn it, like this was not what I anticipated, and I'm just so pissed off. I really, really am.
Let's touch on that then, quick, Jeff, because it's okay to go into it. And I agree with your sentiment here. I don't think Michael Bradley started off this year with the plan that he was going to retire at the end of the season. I don't think even, a tough month or two into the season, I don't think he was really contemplating retirement. I think the reason Michael Bradley is retiring, and again, we'll likely hear from him, and he could probably give us a better answer to this if he'll ever give us maybe the honest truth, but it's what's transpired at the club over the last, I guess, year at this point, maybe even longer. So yeah, it's definitely another instance where a club legend goes out on rather unfavorable terms. This one's a little bit different because he's actually going to be retiring here. So at least fans have that, and fans have Saturday to pay their gratitude and their debt.
Yeah. I don't think we can gloss over that. We can't look a horse in the mouth. And as much as I'd like to rail about, we've got 5 days to say goodbye. We've got 5 days to say goodbye. And that's a hell of a lot better than what we had previously. So, it's not ideal, but it is what it is. I can't sit here and honestly say it's not better than the alternative, because the alternative we've all had to live through with club legends, and it was garbage. This is slightly less garbage.
Yeah, but I think, this is kind of and we were kind of saying this before we came on air, right? This is kind of the Michael Bradley style, right? Like, this is the way, and again, John, Mike, you can probably speak to this better just because of your interactions with him, but like, this is just the way he would have wanted to go out. Not a lot of fuss. I mean, who wants to go through like a Derek Jeter retirement year where like 162 ball games, he's getting flowers every other game. At the end of every series, he's getting a badly drawn mural of him. Like, he doesn't want to go through that. I don't want to see him go through that. Now, of course, I don't want him also going out in the worst TFC season in club history either. Right? That's another thing we may have to grapple with in terms of the way he's going out. And Michael, I think you make a really good point in the sense that, the way things have transpired at the club in the last, we'll say year, but realistically it's probably like at least 2.5, have not treated Michael Bradley very well, right? Like, this is a guy who, when he resigned, took a pay cut with the understanding that the club would be using that money to make the club better, to push the club in a direction that would still make it a contender in MLS. And that has not happened, right? He made that choice, and that's not happened. And I'm sure that's not the only reason. Money's not the thing that's driving him from that perspective, but there's got to be some feelings of, if not broken promises, if you don't want to use that term, then at least the standard at which he helped and so many others during that golden era helped to define as Toronto FC went by the wayside, not even a bit, a lot. And
off the cliff.
Wrote into this. Yeah. And I think that's got to ruffle his feathers a bit. John, I'd love to get your thoughts on that, because I feel like that for a man like him, for a player like him, for a leader like him, that would just ruffle your feathers too much.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the point here is that, if this were 5 years ago, if he was 31 or 32, then, he would be re-upping, right? He'd be here because he'd want to sort of fight to get this team back on track. He would not want it to end, walk away the way he's doing on the back of 3 playoff list seasons. But, I think people have to realize this is not I think people are stuck in the glory sort of years mode of thinking that this is, what do we got to do to get TFC back to 2016 and 2018. Those days
very
are
good point.
Such
a good point, John.
And Michael has said it himself. He says, look, if you're waiting for a return of that era when we beat everyone with swashbuckling football and we were the envy of MLS, you'll be waiting forever because it's not going to happen. He kept saying we have to find another way to do it. I think, at his age and just he's just had enough, right? I mean, God love him. I mean, he's put his heart and soul into this team and he spilled his guts out on the pitch every time he's played. I don't blame him for being tired. I don't blame him for just saying, look, I've had enough. I can't do it anymore. And, given what happened, with his father, Bob earlier this year, given, what's happened, behind the scenes, I don't blame him in the least for wanting to walk away. And let's be clear too. I mean, he's leaving significant money on the table. Maybe not significant to him, but it's certainly significant to you and I, where we're not in his price bracket. And not that he's ever been driven by money, and that's never been his motivation. We get that. But he has the option of coming back next year. He has the option of earning more than $500,000, giving this one final shot, to go out, in a proper way. And he said, look, no, I've had enough. And you have to respect his decision for that. And you might not like the circumstances in which it's happening. And I think, a lot of people don't, but it is what it is. And I think if nothing else, he's earned the rest. He's earned the right to call a shot and say,
yes,
without question.
Point. So I get that everyone's upset and maybe feeling a little, sad about this, which is, perfectly understandable. But at the end of the day, it's Michael Bradley's call. And if he's had enough, then you've got to respect that.
It's the Seinfeld ending. I mean, you're going out on top. Seinfeld could have been renewed for another 100 years, and they didn't. They went out on top. History and his legacy, I hope it's more than a paragraph of ink that is spilled on, I'll call it a boss move because the word escapes me, but refusing a club option year is kind of a boss move. And I would like to see it reflected as more than a knee-jerk reaction from the man. I think it's a statement, and I'm not quite sure what that statement is. It's going to take me a while to, or maybe never to figure it out, but I do think it's important to add to the record, 100%.
I think we need to emphasize that a little bit too. Mike, you touched on it. John, I think you touched on it too. Throughout his career, he always did what's best for the club and left money on the table.
Mhm.
And like we've seen, some athletes around Toronto do that, like maybe a Jason Spezza or a Jor Thornton, like NHL Leafs. But these guys were at the end of their careers.
Mhm.
Michael Bradley did this in 2019, right?
Yeah.
When he was out of contract. Funny enough, if TFC, I believe, had won that MLS Cup final against Seattle,
It would have
automatically
activated, yeah.
triggered a deal which would have made him a designated player for an extra year. But which, by the way, at that time, absolutely warranted a designated player deal.
Yeah,
at the
it would
end
have
of
a second cup.
2019.
It would have a second star on this badge. Sorry, wrong.
Absolutely. So it ended up being his max TAM deal, which he decided to sign because it would free up a DP spot for the team, and he left money on the table. As we learned this year, he did essentially the same thing, where he went to the club and decided to, I guess, restructure his contract so that he made less money but had the player option for next season. It's incredibly rare, I think, just in life, to have a person willing to do that and be so
Mhm.
selfless and always put the club first. I think that's something we just have to really appreciate what we had. I mean, Michael Bradley, again, by every
Legend.
meaning of the word,
By
just
every metric, legend. Like,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable.
did
Yeah, and I
everything
think
for the badge.
Yeah, and I think that's the sentiment that a lot of people, after this announcement was made yesterday, on social media, just in messages I'm getting from people, like the recognition of somebody who came to this city and wholly invested in it. And
Mhm.
not just in the sense of like lip service, like, hey, I love Toronto, it's a great place. Like, we've had a lot of athletes come here and do that in various different organizations, in this very organization. And this is somebody who literally kind of put their money where their mouth is, rooted his family. They live here full time. They love it. I hope he stays in Toronto. I don't know what the future will obviously hold for him after Saturday. But this is somebody who really put Toronto in a lot of ways on his back, and more than just winning trophies and on the pitch and stuff like that. He put it in, he walked it, he lived it. And I think that's why fans have become so attached to him, even in years where you're like, not the same guy. Like, obviously he's getting older. Obviously the pace isn't there. Obviously, and yes, obviously a lot of people think maybe he shouldn't start at 90 minutes every single match. That's the comment I think we've had for the last running commentary we've had really since the end of the pandemic, or at least, coming out of the pandemic season. But even then, I think you would struggle to find a wide swath of TFC fans out there that would be like, no, I don't want Michael Bradley on this team anymore. No, I don't want him being the captain anymore. No, I don't want him representing our club. And that is now in professional sports and in professional football, especially, so rare. You don't find those guys in football anymore, right? Like you're talking, and again, I don't want to, this is a celebration of a club captain that's been here for a decade, but you're talking about somebody like, you're bringing in club captains from other clubs that have, spent a lot of time there, right? And done great things. And they were supposed to bring those leadership skills here. And for whatever reason, it hasn't worked out, right? And there's a lot of ways that Michael Bradley's tenure here could not have worked out, right? There's a scenario where 2014 goes really badly. Jermaine Defoe leaves. He gets these promises from Tim Leiweke and Tim Bezbatchenko, and he's like, you know what? MLS was great. I still have a chance to go back to Italy or to Germany, and I'm going to try myself again and try to go back to Champions League and try to get to that star again. But funny enough, going back to the day that he's announced to the club, we were all in the upper sort of deck of Real Sports, super excited. Obviously, a lot of people are super excited for Jermaine Defoe. Michael Bradley comes out and he says what he says, right? Like, I've never been more excited for a project in my career. And you're thinking, and even like the most optimistic TFC fan at the time's got to be like, you got to be kidding me, right? Have you actually watched this team play? Are you sure? Yep. Like, are you just saying that? And I think there was a little bit of a sentiment around that. And then people got to see it. And I think the thing that cemented it for me was the home opener. I believe it was against Chicago. It might have been DC.
Was it Seattle? No, Seattle was the first game of the season. Yeah. When Defoe scored like 2 goals, and we all thought,
like, oh my God, this is going to be the greatest thing ever. Little did we know. But he goes in for a tackle, and he comes out, and his head's busted open. That bald, gleaming head's busted open, and the crowd went nuts. And I'm like, that guy's going to make it in Toronto. Because the thing about the city and about the region in terms of its stars and people that they love from a sports perspective is, sure, people love Kawhi Leonard and loved him being a superstar. But the guys that like fans really loved, if you're looking at the Leafs, they loved the Darcy Tucker, a Wendell Clark, guys who got down and kind of dirty, right? Like from a basketball sense, like, people really loved, Jonas Valanciunas. Like, no one in the NBA is thinking, I love Jonas Valanciunas, except Toronto Raptor fans who would take him back in a minute. Like, you know what I mean? Like, those kind of guys, those kind of grit guys are what people love. Like, people still love Munenori Kawasaki for the Jays and still talk about, like Aaron Long. Like, these are superstar players. Yeah, but guys who came here and made a name for themselves and through their play became popular. And that's what Michael Bradley did. And that's why I think we're having a whole show about him, why people are wanting to do tributes to him, why, Saturday, I think, is going to be so important for so many people because it will be somewhat cathartic for them to be able to say goodbye, to be able to try to put a bow on this horrible season, at least by saying, like, we know this has all been bad and maybe the club has done you wrong in some ways, but we the people love you, and we the people will make sure that you go down as a legend.
I was going to say, you bring up... Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
No, I'm going to go forever, so you go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just going to say, you bring up a good point, because when you think about it, like, how did Giovinco leave? How did Victor Vasquez leave? How did Josie Altidore leave? How did Greg Vanny leave? There was no sort of proper sort of send-off, right? There was no chance for the fans to have that feeling of catharsis and to sort of give that public display of warmth and love and appreciation. And that's what I think Saturday is going to be. Bradley is, believe me, he's going to hate it because he hates being he hates this kind of thing. I mean, after the Philadelphia game in August, I spoke to him because the previous game he earned his 300th cap, and I wanted to ask him about that. And he would have nothing of it. He's just like, John, I appreciate you got to ask me about it, but all I want to talk about is the game tonight. I don't want to talk about myself. So I can just imagine how he's going to feel on Saturday. But it is important, just given the history of this club, that it hasn't always ended things on the best of terms with players or coaches, and that they haven't been able to get a proper send-off. I think it's quite fitting that Bradley is going to break that mold, and that fans can actually have a chance to say a proper goodbye to him, much like they did, I guess, with Justin Morrow. But I would suggest humbly and respectfully that Bradley's on a higher level, so it's going to be quite something on Saturday.
Yeah. I mean, you've got Mike excited that Michael's going to jump into the crowd and give him purple nurples, just like Justin Morrow did on his last day.
Right.
I don't know if that's going to happen. Toronto's a weird city. It's an interesting vibe, and Michael got it right away, and he got it in a profound way that real heads understood. Real Torontonians understood. He nailed the vibe. And, for a city that is constantly comparing ourselves to what we aren't, or what we, you know, does it feel like New York, or are we cool enough? To have somebody with that pedigree, to have somebody with that kind of, we saw the best parts of ourselves in him. And that relationship was so profound, you know, like when the shit was hitting the fan with identity politics in the United States, you know, MB4 was coming out like a proper Canadian, a measured, intellectual approach to the goings on. It was, they just don't make them like him. Like, there will never be another Michael Bradley at TFC, and one is history. Whoever comes next is going to be compared against the unachievable goal of revisionist history and the God complex that we've instilled. You know, once we deify Michael, which we've probably done already, but he got this town in a way that was just unconscious. And I think that's maybe my favorite thing about him is it's rare. It's so rare for a high-priced athlete to come to your town and just nail the vibe perfectly. And it felt like it felt like fate. It really did. It's a beautiful thing.
Can I share a story?
Please.
So after the 2016 final, right?
We've got Dunlop in, and he's only in for 10 minutes.
Bring him in. Sorry, I'll share the story afterwards.
Yeah. Oh wow, we're going 5. This is tiny.
Yeah,
look at our tiny little windows. This is great.
Yeah,
Sorry for
welcome
making it
to the
worse
show, Brendan Dunlop. How
What's
you doing,
up,
buddy?
guys?
No, we love it. It's chaos. Bring it.
Well, I'm doing good. I enjoyed the career eulogy there and your tales of Michael Bradley, and I agree with you, Jeff. He's there won't be another one like him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Brendan, I'm really curious because, again, like the other two gentlemen here, and JMO and Michael, you've had an opportunity to talk to Michael Bradley in a professional setting. You've been in those press conferences before. I'm sure your recollections will be similar to these two gentlemen, but I just want to get your sense of scope around what Michael Bradley meant, not just to Toronto FC. I think that's pretty obvious. Trophies in the shelf. There's a star on my badge here because of him. But what he kind of meant to the general kind of sports landscape in terms of, a guy who really invested in Toronto.
I mean, when he arrived with Jermaine Defoe, right, people thought he was the extra piece. I think people took for granted that there was this American midfielder, someone who plays an unflattering position at times as a defensive midfielder. A lot of people kind of just dismissed that in a lot of ways. He'd lost the job at Roma that seemed like he had a good handle on, and he'd lost it to Nangolan at the time, and it was all of a sudden that was the end of it. 26, his European career is done. I think a lot of people thought that we wouldn't be talking about Michael Bradley 10 years later, let alone 10 years at one club. And he came into this city and treated it like it was his hometown from the beginning, fell in love with it, made it his hometown. And I think that's something that surprised a lot of people, but also to see someone fall in love with like this place, as Jeff says, just to fall in love with your own hometown, but to fall in love with this place. Not too many people in his position, the captain of the U.S. men's national team, having grown up in American soccer the way that he did, I think it says a lot about him, the person, and it says a lot about the city too. I think a lot of people in this city, need to be reminded by someone else or feel very low about the city in general. And when you have someone like that come in and fall in love with it the way that they did, that's what made a lot of those Saturday nights and a lot of those nights at BMO so extra special, because he very much made you feel like he loved being here and wanted to be here. And obviously made it work with the contract to get a few more years at the end and, to get to another MLS Cup final. From my exchanges with him, I remember because I was a desk guy, I didn't get out to training very much. I didn't get out on the scene very much. I wasn't in the press conferences nearly as much as JMO and Michael Singh. I'd be there a couple times a year, if that. And it was ahead of the MLS Cup final. And I hadn't been before that. I hadn't been tasked with the assignment. But I was going to Seattle. So I think I went up to training in 2 days. And Michael Bradley looked at me as in like, oh, now you show up? That was the look. And I just felt like just absolutely deserved reaction. I will wait my turn for however many people you think should ask questions before me. I am more than happy to wait my turn for that. I get that. And also remarkable calves. Singh and JMO, you can speak to this. Like phenomenal, on the Mount Rushmore of fantastic calves. There's Jack Grealish and there's Michael Bradley, and I don't know who takes the other 2 spots.
Love it. Well, I mean, he's got to be that fit, right? Like, I mean, I think you guys have both.
Oh, you said calves. I thought you said caps, and I was like, what, like hoodies, like what?
No. We're talking about those legs, baby.
Yeah. You could cut diamonds off those calves. Those are.
Well, I mean, like he's like the fittest. Standard. He's a robot, right? Like he's the fittest human being. Like there's obviously, I think the three of you and we've also heard the tales of just how fit he is, and like and it speaks again to things we've talked about, right? His professionalism, the way that he takes care of himself on the pitch. But I mean, it's funny. I'll share 2 stories really quick about Michael Bradley. So one, after the 2016 final, I'm at Yonge subway station. I'm heading to work, and we're going on a northbound train, and Michael Bradley's just standing there waiting to get on the train. And I'm like, what is happening? What is my life right now? Why is Michael Bradley getting on the northbound train at like 8 a.m? And you can see people. This is like the Tuesday after the final, so you could see people kind of like, oh, I think I know that guy. There's some people who are like, I think I know that guy, but I don't know that guy. And it's me and some other young cat who know who he is. And we get on the train, and like, I don't want to like blow up his spot. I don't want to like get up in his face and stuff. He's getting on the train in the morning, but this kid is like so nervous to go up and talk to him and ask him for a selfie. So I like kind of go up to the kid, I tap him, I say, go get a selfie with him. And like he goes over, and of course Michael Bradley's super nice. He does the selfie, and I'm like, all right, if this kid goes, I gotta go. So I go up. I finally go up to ask for a selfie. I gotta get off at St. Clair Station. St. Clair Station arrives, and we're just chatting a little bit, and then I'm like, I had to make the decision: do I get off at St. Clair Station, or do I just miss my stop, be late for work, and I take the picture and I just have the chat with him? And of course, I'm late for work. I take 2 extra stops. I go north. We take the picture. It's great.
Damn right.
I'll share it on Twitter again. I think I still have it. The second story I'll share is I was at a TFC2 game last year. Speaking of your calf story, Dunlop. I'm there. Bob Bradley's sitting in front of me, and then Michael comes up with Luca to watch a TFC2 game. And again, we know how fit he is, but I could not believe there was not an ounce of fat on this man. Like I was intimidated. I'm like, me and my rolls were just sitting there like, what am I doing here right now? I can't be here. And he just, we just shot the shit for a couple of minutes, and then I was like, all right, I need to go. You are making me feel inadequate as a human.
Yeah, so I gotta go do sit-ups for the next 3 days. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Do you think he's gonna stay fit, or do you think that now that he's hung up the boots and he's not eating boiled chicken anymore, he's going to expand like fat Ronaldo immediately? Because I don't know if I can handle fat Michael Bradley. So
Ronaldo had a thyroid problem.
Okay, fine. I'll choose a better example next time. But you have to admit that when you get out of being in training 24/7, eating boiled chicken and rice for every meal, that bad things can happen to your physique and metabolism. So
fat Michael Bradley already sounds like a parody. It doesn't sound even probable.
No, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it.
Where would it go on those
that
bones?
GIF is my favorite TFC GIF ever. He's never had popcorn in his entire life. He's miming it so badly. Like he's not winning an Oscar for that performance. Like it's just like the revulsion. There's like an instant of revulsion when it gets close enough that he can smell the butter, and then it's just gone. It's just gone. Like he was the wrong person to choose for that GIF.
He strikes me as the type of guy that will allow himself a couple of good meals. Like JMO, maybe he'll now allow you to cook for him. He'll have a big pasta meal, but then for the next 3 days, he's gonna intermittent fast, and he's going to take it quite easy.
Richard makes a great point. His dad is crazy fit, so maybe there's no such thing as a fat Bradley.
No, I can't. Where does it fit on those bones? You look at that frame, it's like, it's not possible. Mike, here's a question for you. You're a foodie. You like going to restaurants. You know hot spots to go eat. If you're going with Michael Bradley, he's now retired. He's got time in the city. Where are you taking him?
Oh, man. You're putting me on the spot there, man. If I
you're going to Soto, bro, or one of Jake's places.
Yeah, you're going to Soto. Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
gonna
yeah, yeah.
soda just for me, man. Come on, there's a chance I can see Drake.
Yeah, because you're living that life, right?
I'm taking him to Sumolicious, which is the guy from Schwartz's that started a restaurant in Toronto. We're getting smoked meat. We're gonna be in a food coma for a good 12 hours because
No,
it's quite a distance away.
I gotta shout out this low key spot that I was actually at the other day. I'm sure people have heard of it, Campachano's.
Oh, I love that place.
JMo's a fan. Taco place. It's kind of like a hole in the wall kind of place in downtown Toronto. Delicious, absolutely. So maybe me and him can go there and crush a couple tacos.
Again,
Sounds great.
I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to envision Michael Bradley putting in a barbacoa, like fully loaded.
I can't. I can't. I think he eats chocolate bars with a knife and fork, George Costanza style. Just like I'm going to nurse this one, and then 30 minutes later, he's on his last bite of Snickers.
I heard a rumor a little while back that he doesn't drink at all. I don't know if anyone has ever seen him.
That
drink,
does not surprise me at all.
But I heard.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all.
Doesn't drink at all.
Nah,
sometimes it looks like he's not drinking water.
Honestly,
just go squeeze. He runs his body is made up of 90% go squeeze at this point, and we're all the better for it.
Kidding me? CanPL would be all over that if as go squeeze is a sponsor of CPL. Brendan, just a quick one for you.
Yes, please.
Obviously, with now this is coming down, how do you think? Obviously, okay, so Toronto fans, TFC fans are definitely going to show him love and give him all the flowers on Saturday.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we were sort of talking about the nature of him leaving and how that is sort of playing out right now. How are you feeling about this? Because it's like 5 days notice going into his final game. Like how does that sit with you in terms of just the way this is all coming about?
It does feel sad, to be honest, because this whole year was a disaster, and like one thing after another, from them losing to start the season, to losing Insigne, to them to visibly disliking each other, the stories that come out around what's going on with the team, then Bradley having to live in London for half the season and get placenta treatment or whatever it was he was alternative treatment to try and heal his injury, and it's just sad to see that this does seem kind of like a natural end point where this team is going through a major rebuild, a brand new era under a new manager that's going to put his own stamp on the team, and that both leadership and in the middle of the pitch are two very important parts of what will be Herdman's new start. And sadly, Michael Bradley doesn't fit into that anymore. And if Bob was still around, I think there's another role that's a diminished role that works for Michael Bradley, but I don't see that having been the possibility with under John Herdman, and maybe it just took them both some time to kind of figure that out. I do feel as though John Herdman didn't come in thinking, oh, Mike's not for me, let's let that contract run out, it's done. I generally think he wanted to be around him, speak to him, see what he thought, go back and forth, kind of negotiate what works best for you. And in the end, I think Michael looks at this situation and goes, what's best for me is to be home with my family. And Herdman said very pointedly he's very happy to be done with the politics of the national team program. And to be honest, I bet you Michael Bradley feels the same thing about TFC.
Yeah. It
for,
feels like such a. Sorry, I'll stop.
No, it's okay. Just question for
honest.
Yeah, a question for you. Just and John, I'll start with you. Just in terms of, do you think Michael Bradley stays with the club in a different capacity, or do you think this is kind of it with the relationship?
I get the sense that this is probably going to be it for the relationship. I mean, I think we'd be having a different discussion if his father was still around. Like if his, say everything went well with the TFC this year and his dad was going to coach this year, then I think there's a very distinct possibility. I think from what I'm hearing, I think there's some bad feelings there about how things would happen with Bob, and not to the point where it soured, Michael to the point he wants to wash his hands completely the organization. I don't think he's ever going to do that, but I can see him being a little sort of cheesed off about it and moved on. And look, at the same time, I mean, while he was in London, he was getting his coaching badges too, right? So, I mean, I think he was preparing for this. I mean, I don't think this was a decision that was made just last week. I think he was sort of hedging his his bets a bit. And the fact that he got his sort of coaching badges earlier this year was an indication that that this was going to happen. So I think he has ambitions to stay involved in the game and coaching. And I don't think he's going to be coaching at TFC2 or in MLS Next Pro or the USL or the CPL. I think
starts with an S.
Yeah, I think he has
Arbeck. Yeah,
he has higher ambitions than that. So yeah, I suspect that he's going to move on, which is sad because you'd like to see him sort of retain some sort of position with the club. But I guess we'll find out when he speaks to the media later this week.
Yeah, let's go full Brady Bunch because I don't want to leave Grossi hanging here. And there we go. Here's a story of a bunch of Bradley fans.
There are way too many faces on the screen. And before we get started, I can confirm that Michael Bradley does, in fact, eat pizza. I had to do a piece once before.
What?
Okay,
I think that was a psyop, man. That was a psyop. I think he did that just so that you would write that he eats pizza, so that he could get away with not ever eating pizza ever. Yeah.
Okay, it wasn't like a cheap pizza slice from the stadium, right? Like, it wasn't like the stuff that it's got to be like the Mercanti or something like that.
The All-Star game was in Chicago, and I was tasked with finding out where his pizza spot was back when he lived in Chicago, and it was a
deep dish. Deep dish is no slouch, man. Like
I don't think it was deep dish. I think he went against the current there. I think he went regular old school slice. There's a place called the Slice or something like that.
Okay.
I can't remember the full name, but I think it was called like the Slice or something with Slice in Chicago. That was his spot when he called Chicago home. Yeah.
Guys, I love Chicago.
Quick Chicago story, because I knew that you love Chicago eats
Singh
and Chicago pizza. I was in Chicago. I worked the Gold Cup. The opening of the Gold Cup was Jamaica, USA. And the crew that I was working with were people from all over. There was a lot of Latino people. There were some Europeans. And so the idea of Chicago-style pizza was this novelty but they have, not even the same connection to pizza that we have, let alone as much of a, maybe perhaps an interest as much as it was a curiosity. And their reaction to what is this pizza cake? This isn't pizza. The reaction to that was outstanding. So I made sure that nobody from Chicago could hear them as I was sat.
Yeah, because they would have been chased out with pitchforks, man.
Nah, there's a lot of people in Chicago don't like Chicago style pizza. There's a lot of people in Chicago.
Okay, I gotta produce. I know Dunny was only gonna stay for 10 minutes and we're over that limit. So I'm not kicking you out because this window's amazing. I'm seeing like a little version of myself, which is agreeable to me. Do you wanna regale us with what is your biggest memory of Michael Bradley? Are you even prepared to go there yet? I mean, we're all so punch drunk. Yeah.
I'm prepared to go there. To be honest, I think I kind of this was like cemented for me, and there was nothing that he could do to ever kind of move off of this. But I was at Olympic Stadium that night that they were getting wiped the turf with by the impact, and he turned around and looked at everybody and was like, "This is not us. Like, we're not going down to these losers on this horrible field. Like, let's go and get something out of this." And I just felt like that was a, that term generalissimo gets thrown around a lot, especially with anyone who can speak Italian or has played over there. But that to me, it was undeniable that that's what that was, and that came from him. And then to see, how it turned out for TFC in the second leg of that Eastern Conference final against Montreal, I'll kind of never forget those moments. So I will always see him in that shirt with the charcoal sleeves and leading them to their first final.
He wore the two shirts that are way too tight for anybody else better than any TFC player ever. Like the
Defoe era, the first one.
The Onyx that I love that every TFC player can't stand, and then the other one, the home kit with the Bonetta clip that I clipped. He wears the hell out of that kit because he's got 0% body fat. So yeah, I mean, the guy's a clothes horse. He could follow McNaughton into male modeling if he wanted to.
Great stuff, man.
Grossi, now that we've got you here, let's open the floor. You have the conch. Let's hear your favorite Michael Bradley story.
My favorite Bradley. There's a lot of them, man. He's been such a strong and ever-present presence over my whole time covering this team in the last decade. So, I go back to one of my earliest encounters, and that was, I was a young Cub reporter heading up to the BMO training ground in Downsview Park. and I see somebody wheeling away as I'm on the bus, and I see Michael Bradley, and he's driving a car, and my thought was just, oh, good for you, Michael, driving a car like the rest of us schlubs, doing regular human things. And so that was one of the first times I saw Michael in real life, was he was driving a car away from me. So that will always stick. And then there were a ton of those little quiet moments. Everyone's seen, the driving force he was on the pitch, as Brendan mentioned, in Montreal, that game, the MLS Cups, all that. But, one time I stumbled down the halls of the BMO training ground, and Michael was there with his son, just showing him around the place. And, that's those are the kind of moments that nobody writes about them, and you can't share them with everybody, but they were, it was just a cool moment to see this guy who we've seen do so much on the field just have a private moment with his son. And hopefully me sharing it with you guys here isn't breaking that trust. But and then another time,
he's coming after you. He's got nothing but free time now. He's like Buscemi with the list and lipstick, and you just went to the top of the list.
He's not eating pizza with you, Grossi.
No more pizza. No more pizza.
We've all had that death stare. It was sort of a rite of passage of being up around that place. Was enduring that whenever the question wasn't to his liking. But yeah, just so many things. And I think another one that I feel like I should mention is that double-decker bus tour through downtown Toronto. There were guys, hooping and hollering and having a wonderful time and making a bit of a scene. And Michael was just sort of, calmly at the front of one of those buses, just surveying and taking it all in. And, you could sense that he was soaking that in, that was something that he didn't want to pass that up, because he knew how hard they had worked for that moment. And he knew how much it was a reflection of what that team had accomplished. And so those are a couple, that's the day of Josie's famous speech on the stage there in Toronto.
Opens every show.
It does.
Every show. Yes, it does.
It was a spectacular moment, but I liked the idea of Michael just sort of calmly captaining those buses through a throng of crowds downtown and soaking that in. That was a good one for me.
Isn't that funny? Even during a championship parade, still captaining the bus.
Lovely sentiment.
If he had captained the Raptors championship parade, they wouldn't have been stuck there for like 4 hours.
It wouldn't have been 6 hours late. Yeah, people would have lost it in the square.
Marcus All wouldn't have just got so sloppy. Just it'd have been a great time.
I think Grossi's the most, like, when I pitched you coming on, you were like, I'm still coming to terms with it, but like, you seem to be the most okay with this out of all of us. Like, I am choking back tears, my friend. Like, honestly, I'm talking so little because like anything's going to set me off right now. But I have you made your peace with this, or are you still in the process of making?
No, it's mostly just because I'm dead inside. But I'm
Grossi, not to cut you off, buddy, but I'm gonna make my peace because
Go ahead and dip.
Thank you for the time, Brendan. Really appreciate it.
But I don't have the time. Anytime, guys. Talk
Cheers,
to you soon.
buddy.
Cheers.
I think it's because Grossi, alongside me, I think we're the all-time leader in terms of death stares from Michael Bradley, if I'm not mistaken.
You got to be. You have to be. And I would be curious which one of you wins, but you don't keep tabs, so.
No, I think Grossi may edge me, although I don't know. It's pretty close. Wow. Although
I had a run.
It's been a while since I got one, to be honest. So,
see, this is what we got to do now. We've got to get Michael Bradley in the show, and we're going to ask him that question, because I bet you he's got like a.
I bet you he remembers.
Yeah, he's got a ledger somewhere. He's got a ledger. He knows.
He knows. I don't know what else to say, guys. I mean, I've enjoyed this therapy. I still feel like shit. I don't know if I mean, it's not a reflection on any of your.
Yeah, I don't think you've said anything that Toronto FC fans aren't feeling, Jeff. And if I could share sort of just two things. There are a few comments from Twitter. We did put out a post just before the show. This has been put together sort of a little bit last minute in terms of the show. But we did ask some fans to just write something, what you'd want to say to Michael Bradley pending his retirement. So I do have a few of these to read out before we wrap up the show. But I don't want to underplay, and I don't think we have, but I don't want to underplay how important it was to watch him lift all those trophies as a fan. For somebody who's been around, and a lot of you who are watching and listening to us, whether you're watching us live right now or listening days later on the podcast version, have been with this club since 2007, maybe even before that, when they made the announcement and you put down your $20 for season tickets as a deposit. Up until Michael Bradley lifted really the Eastern Conference Championship trophy in 2016, there has always been this sense of, I don't know if this club will ever figure it out. And James and JMO, you will know this feeling as well as in your reporting. I have read your reporting, both of you, for years. I have sensed it in your work at times. But as a fan, seeing him lift those trophies, and especially then seeing him lift the MLS Cup in 2017, I don't think he'll understand the amount of joy he brought people. Like, I don't know if he and Seba and Josie and Drew Moore and all those guys on that team will really fully understand the moment of that, how important it was. For them, obviously, as professionals, it's a goal. They want to lift trophies. They want it to be the best at what they do every day. But from a fan perspective, it made all of the crap that we had dealt with up until that point worth it.
Yep.
If that makes sense, right? And I think we, in that moment, lived that beautiful dream that we all seen in Europe, where clubs are crap forever and then they win a championship and you get that moment. Like, we got to live that moment in 2017. And we almost got ecstasy in Guadalajara, right? We were literally a Marquis Delgado sitter away. I know it was a chance.
Come on.
I'm not over it, but I am over it, but I'm not over it. But that's the thing that if I could say to Michael Bradley, if I could express to him in some way, that's the thing. It is that you brought people in this city who love this game, who wanted to see their hometown club do something special, so much joy. And I don't know if there's enough words to ever there isn't, other than to say thank you. That's it. Because like that there other people win cups here. I think we'll win another MLS Cup at some point.
yeah.
But it won't. It will be great. It won't be that, and I can't thank him enough.
I'll add to that quick, Mike. Just like you're saying, like specifically Toronto FC fans of what it meant there. Man, the city of Toronto at that time was so trophy starved and so even just success starved, right? The last major trophy, no offense to the Argos, no offense to the Toronto Rock, but the last major trophy in Toronto was the 92-93 World Series. And if you think back to the summer of 2015 with the Blue Jays and how electric that atmosphere was, because it was the first time they made it back to the postseason in 20 years. That's how like trophy starved Toronto was. There was something special about a team that was starting to find success in this city, a major league team that was starting to find success in this city. And Toronto FC did it before, the Leafs could once again. They still, are hoping to find and crack through. Hopefully it's this year. They did it before the Raptors did in 2019, and they did it before the Jays did it again before 93. So like that moment meant so much to, yes, of course, Toronto FC fans, who for sure is probably more special to them, but the city of Toronto as a whole, that they embraced Toronto FC because of the success that they had, especially in going back-to-back years, reaching the final, so that they can just build on, the momentum, the overall story, the overall narrative of just waiting until less about Brad, more so about the team. But when Josie Altidore scored that goal finally in 2017, that was years and years and years in the making. And, I remember, reading stories about Kyle Lowry being asked about Michael Bradley, and Kyle Lowry saying, I can't wait. And I wish that I could become like the leader that he is. That's just because Michael Bradley put it on for this city before really anyone else in my generation.
So well said.
Absolutely.
So well said.
if I can, I will. No read for this one. It is the burning question presented by Nesker Canada here.
Yeah,
I
it
do
feels
wanna
disingenuous to throw the
Yeah,
title up.
yeah,
and-
exactly.
yeah.
We won't do that on this show, but I do want to read a couple of these from listeners who just wanted to say something to Michael Bradley before we wrap up the show. Ravi just writes in and says, "Thank you for giving us everything you had day in and day out. You were always a rock for us and our voice of reason, especially during those dark days." That's from Ravi. Arnold, a long listener of the show, a little tongue in cheek. Practice penalties more, please. It's amazing how no fans really persevered over some of these misses. Seriously though, one, what was TFC's most complete game? Does he really understand how beloved he is with the supporters? And then Turt's just writing in, "Thank you for turning our team around and giving the team a winning mentality. Thank you for the trophies and making our city your home. Thank you for being our captain, and sorry for the slander from the fan base on your family name." Yeah, I think there's a lot of these sentiments out there right now. And it's not just directed to us. It's been all over the place. I've seen in the last 24 hours. Before we wrap up, maybe again, JMO and James, I'll just come to you guys. Just any
Please.
last thoughts on sort of his legacy here and obviously what Saturday is going to mean for you? Because I assume you both will be in the building.
Yeah, I mean, it's look, it's hardly original thought, but I don't think there's any question that he's, the most influential and important player in the history of the franchise. Not the greatest, maybe not the most popular, and maybe not the most skilled, but certainly the most important. And James and I were talking to Lazar Stefanovic earlier today, and James had a chance to ask him about Michael Bradley, and he said, Lazar had started at the academy when he was an under 10. He's 17 now. And he said, throughout the academy, they hold up, players as examples, as top pros to sort of, model yourself after. And he said, Michael Bradley was the one that they continuously presented to the academy kids to pattern yourself after. And I think that says it all. I mean, his influence at this club, it sort of reached every nook and cranny from the top down, from management level to to starting out. And players who have coming up through that academy system for years to come have had the example of Michael Bradley to sort of aspire to. And so I think his influence is going to continue on at this club for a very long time. So even though Saturday's is his last game, his fingerprints will remain on this club for a very long time. And as I wrote something today, I mean, whenever MLSE decides to sort of commission trophies to go up outside of BMO Field, I mean, his is going to be the first one erected before Seba's, before Josie's, before anyone's else, because his sort of record of influence was just immense.
I'm putting it out here. I think his statue should be him out front on the pitch at the training ground, like in the center circle, just giving a death stare, 360, and you can move it to whoever isn't cutting, isn't doing well, or just like on a spider cam, just like a Michael Bradley hologram, just like, nope, bad, because I'm worried about the state of this club when he's not there anymore. I'm worried about the standards. I did not mean to cut you off, Grossi. I really want to hear what you have to say.
No, I was gonna say I was gonna go exactly where John went with that. I even have mentioning our conversation with Laz in my notes here, and there hasn't been a young player that I've spoken to over the last 5-6 years that the subject of Michael's influence and the way that Michael goes about things and his ethos hasn't sort of been a topic of conversation. I remember speaking with Dante Campbell, who had such a good year with Valor when he was captaining TFC2 a couple of years ago. And he was talking to me about, being one of the older guys on the team and just, leading from that position and being a quiet sort of force in the middle of the pitch. And I even remarked to him, like, you're sounding a lot like Michael Bradley right now. I didn't realize that sort of thing could rub off. And so, yeah, we're not gonna be able to see Michael play on that pitch anymore after Saturday. I'll be keeping a close eye to watch him checking over his shoulder 1,000 times a minute for the last time, because that's one of my favorite things to do when I watch Michael play. But I think we're going to see that influence in a lot of ways, not just those young guys that I was talking about, but seeing the way that Oso has stepped up in the last couple of years and become that vocal leader that comes out and faces the media and takes those hard questions and gives those insightful answers. I think that's Michael's influence too. And so, the general might be leaving, but his influence will still be here for a while still, I think.
Awesome. JPN, Mike, we got a show on Monday, so I think we can sort of give some additional final thoughts
on Monday. I don't want to steal. We're lucky to have these guests. I mean, like,
absolutely.
You want to talk about Michael's influence on the club. You can't have better guests than these two gentlemen.
Absolutely.
I hope, I'm speaking to our audience now. I hope we made you feel better. I hope we over this hour, we enjoyed reminiscing. I hope to see you all there on Saturday. I know it's terrible for my schedule. There's a band that I'm desperate to see that I have to hit at 8 p.m., but I'm still going to be there. And damn it if I miss the opening act, because this is way too important. Thank you. I think this was important. I didn't want to do this. I know you two know how badly I didn't want to do this, but I'm glad we did. I feel a little bit less shitty.
Well, I'm glad you feel a little less shitty. I hope TFC fans, you feel a little less shitty about it. Actually, I really hope. Look, Saturday they could lose. That's a real possibility.
Yeah.
They could end up with the worst record in club history on that day. And of course, there will be time for recriminations. We will definitely be doing it on this show. But I think there also needs to be a reflection of what this captain has meant to us, has meant to this club, and has meant to a lot of people within that club. So it's an opportunity to celebrate that. And then come Monday, we can start to sort of dissect this team and dissect sort of what went wrong and where it needs to go for next season. But that's it for our celebration show. Don't worry. I really appreciate John Molinaro, Brendan Dunlop, and James Grossi for coming on the show. Gentlemen, we really do appreciate your time and your insight.
So appreciated.
We really appreciate it. For Michael Singh, for Jeffrey P. Nesker, I'm Mike Newell. We'll see you all next week. Cheers, everybody.
Let's roll this one again. Everybody get out the...
And wait! Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Michael Bradley.
I can tell you all that I have never been more excited, more determined, and more motivated for any challenge in my entire career.
For me, at this point in my career, I'm excited to be back and looking forward to taking a big role in Toronto.
He's the one that gives the most on the field, the most competitive, who's the best example for a locker room.
Okie dokie. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
Might be the obvious answer, but a soccer player.
Soccer player. I got that.
Very effective game tonight from Michael Bradley. Sometimes it goes unnoticed, the work that he puts in.
I've had some of the biggest moments of my career, the biggest moments of my career at BMO Field. Our fans, my family, it's special. I've never been more proud of anything in my career.